How guilty can someone be for doing absolutely nothing? There are obvious moral implications, but legally, not reporting a crime you witness for the most part is not a crime in and of itself. Just about everyone is familiar with the old Bible parable of the Good Samaritan. I'm sure most of us would like to think, if possible, we would be that Good Samaritan. If we could help out, I'm sure most of us would at least try, which is why the story of Jeremy Strohmeyer and David Cash is one that is so difficult to understand. While Jeremy is serving multiple life sentences, his best bud David is free and getting on with his life. Some people thought this to be a huge injustice and saw David's inaction as somewhat comparable to the actual crime. As horrified as people were at the crime that we're going to talk about today, the idea that someone could watch some of it happen and not say anything or be riddled with guilt and sickness was a far more terrifying idea to a lot of people. Remorselessness isn't a crime, however, it does raise some questions. A widespread conversation was sparked from this case, and from it even new laws and legislations that were desperately needed. We are still feeling the reverberations of this crime today, almost 3 decades later, and I think once I tell you about it, you will probably understand why. This is the story of Jeremy Strohmeyer and David Cash, but most importantly, this is the story of little Sherice Iverson, a 7-year-old lady who should have never been in this situation from the start. Jeremy Strohmeyer was a guy who was afforded much more opportunity over the short time he spent on the outside than most. Adopted by good parents, John and Winnie Strawmeyer, who already had a daughter, helping Jeremy escape a home life of drugs and abuse before it could really start. Both Jeremy's biological parents were on drugs and unable to care for a child, so at 18-month-old, he found himself relocated to California with a whole new life ahead of him. His parents say growing up, he was a good kid and lived a normal life. As far as warning signs go, there apparently were none. He got good grades, had lots of friends and got girlfriends. There was just nothing there according to his parents. So what could have possibly gone wrong? Well, who better to explain that than Jeremy himself? Speaking from jail as an adult, he reflects and paints a much different picture.
What went wrong?
A lot of things.
Jeremy was always concerned about being adopted.
Sometimes I felt that I was going crazy. Nobody understood me. I felt outside, that I'd see things in a certain way, but nobody else could see it the same way I did.
You didn't tell your parents?
No.
In high school, Jeremy says he began to use alcohol. At first, just at parties, but by his senior year, he depended on it.
It felt good. Everything seemed to fall into place.
And Jeremy began to take drugs, methamphetamines, also known as speed.
It was around age 17 that, in his parents' eyes, he started to act out and withdraw, but they didn't think anything of it, chalking it down to, quote, teenage-itis, an incredibly reductive way to put the very real issues he was facing.
Jeremy was about 16 or 17 when you began to notice problems?
Yes. I noticed that he spent more time by himself. He started to withdraw.
What did you think was happening?
It looked a lot like teenage-itis.
He's been coming home late, and his studies, where he's very focused, started to fall off.
You thought it was adolescent rebellion?
Assertion of independence.
They had no idea as to the extent of Jeremy's issues. Genetics load the gun, personality and psychology aim it, and your experiences pull the trigger. Jeremy was a perfect storm waiting to happen, and it would be around this time he met the catalyst who would go on to become his best friend, David Cash. In that same interview from prison, Jeremy states the two of them used to get up to some morally reprehensible and outright criminal acts. After the fact, Jeremy even admits as much, although not in those same words.
I would become a real jerk.
Well, worse than that, friends later say that there were prostitutes that you would pick up and drag as you were driving your car.
When I was drunk, Dave would say, hey, grab her purse, grab her purse, let's go, and we'll grab her purse and take off.
Were you afraid yourself? Did you know what was happening to you?
I thought I could handle it.
Not much is known about David's early life, but we do know he graduated with a bachelor's degree in nuclear engineering in 2001 after enrolling in the fall of '97, but it wasn't without its pushbacks from the students at the University of Berkeley in California, because many of them were of the belief that he should have been spending time behind bars too, much like his best mate Jeremy. His classmates knew the pair were inseparable and had done some messed up stuff in the past, but nothing quite like this. But what exactly did they do? Well, it was so bad that new laws were created because of it. Because in the early morning hours of May the 25th, 1997, Jeremy and David were both out in Prim, Nevada at a prima donna casino, enjoying themselves into the early hours of the morning. It was at this time, around 4 AM, a young lady named Sherice Iverson was also present at that same casino at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now that is just ridiculous. Nobody should ever have to explain why, but apparently they did to little Sharice's dad, who was supposed to be looking after her at the casino, but he was busy gambling and clearly not paying attention. He also said that he left his 14-year-old son in charge, who was also at the casino, but you can't blame a 14-year-old, which I feel the dad is kinda trying to do here a little bit. In any case, what remains is that Jeremy began repeatedly making apparently playful contact with 7-year-old Sharice, who was roaming the casino alone and totally unmonitored. When Sharice went to the ladies' bathroom, Jeremy followed her in. This was all captured on the casino CCTV, luckily. Then we see David follow last, and I'll let David explain himself what happened next.
Jeremy Strohmeyer and Sherice Iverson were throwing paper towels at each other. They were just playing, seemed just horsing around. And it came to a point where Jeremy grabbed her and took her into a stall, to one of the bathroom stalls. I went into the adjacent stall, looked over, and Jeremy was restraining her with his left hand over her stomach and his right hand over her mouth.
And she was trying to scream.
He was muffling her screams.
Cash says he then heard Strawmeyer threaten Sherice Iverson, saying, "Shut up or I'll kill you."
I tapped him on the head, because it was completely out of character, and he didn't really respond to me. He gave me kind of a blank stare. So, in my opinion, it was like time for me to get out of there.
Why?
Well, when an 18-year-old male grabs a 7-year-old child, that's not a position I want to be in. Based on what I saw, it wasn't something I wanted to stick around and see what would materialize.
Did you say to him, Jeremy, come on, stop, let's go?
I was giving him a look as if, that he shouldn't be doing that.
But you never said, stop, get out of here, this is wrong.
Verbally, I did not say that, but my body language certainly suggested it.
According to the surveillance cameras, David Cash walked out of the bathroom about 2 minutes after he entered. Strawmeyer was seen leaving some 22 minutes later. But Sherice Iverson never left. Her body was discovered in the bathroom. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled.
What did he say to you when he came out?
He immediately confessed.
Confessed?
Yes.
What did he say?
He looked at me and said, I killed her.
Just like that?
just like that.
After Strawmeyer confessed to Cash that he had killed Sherice Iverson, they went to other casinos where they played slot machines and rode roller coasters for several hours before heading back home to California.
Did you think to turn him in to the police?
The thought crossed my mind, but I didn't act on it.
Why?
I know that his day of reckoning is coming. I didn't want to be the one that turned him in.
You felt that was more important than to report a murderer.
Even though he had told me that he had committed murder, it was really hard for me to fathom Jeremy as a quote-unquote murderer.
But he told you he was.
I understand that, but he's also my best friend.
You know, we're taking AP English together.
I'm sure at this point you're starting to see the problem. It was actually down to fellow classmates that the sexual assault and murder of little Miss Sherice Iverson was solved, as they were the ones that pointed out the pair in the CCTV footage. It didn't take long for Jeremy to be arrested after Sherice's lifeless body was found in a toilet stall by casino security. Just 3 days later, Jeremy was in custody and getting charged. 3 weeks after that, he pled guilty in a plea deal in order to avoid the death penalty and got life with no chance of parole. But David, on the other hand, got nothing. It's unclear if the police even spoke to him. I'd imagine they did and had to just let him go because technically, and most importantly for David, he was not culpable for this crime, to the sheer dismay of just about everyone that knew of the case. As Peggy Lane, the deputy district attorney at the time, explains why they made the choice to leave David a free man, a decision she was involved in.
How would you characterize the conduct of David Cash in this case?
Morally reprehensible. And it's unfathomable that someone could see conduct of that nature and not take some form of action.
Why then didn't your office charge him with any crime?
Moral reprehensibility isn't a crime. You have to participate, do something affirmatively to assist in the commission of a crime. Watching and failing to report, regrettably, is not a crime.
But, I mean, isn't there something wrong with that? I mean, you've got someone who could have saved that child's life and who did nothing about it, and yet there's no way to hold him accountable.
There may not be any way to hold him legally accountable. He's certainly accountable in the court of public opinion, and he's certainly accountable ultimately in how people respond to his morally bankrupt behavior. Should we as a society punish this as a crime? It's basically an attempt to legislate morality. And historically, we haven't been very successful in our efforts to legislate morality. From prohibition to prostitution, you can tell somebody not to do it, you can regulate it, you can punish it. But ultimately, it doesn't do a very good job of changing the conduct.
You might be thinking, why would anyone want to charge someone who had witnessed something so shocking? What if he was in shock, or what if he was like scared of Jeremy or something? I mean, surely there's got to be something there. I personally believe that it wasn't so much what happened, him witnessing this horrific crime and not reporting it, but rather why he didn't report it and the things that he went on to say afterwards. He quickly became one of the most hated individuals in the area, but the case didn't really garner the attention of wider mainstream media, and it was thanks to a successful marketing campaign by Sharice's mother and the students of UC Berkeley that the case really got out to the wider public at all.
He seen Jeremy Strohmeyer put his hands over her mouth and carried her in the bathroom. He's seen it. Anytime you stand and you look at something happening to anybody, not only your child, any human being, a dog, a cat, or whatever, you've seen that happen. So you a murder within yourself. You still got the blood of my babies on your hand.
You think he is an accessory to murder?
Yes, he is. I think he should be charged with accessory to the murder of my child because he could have did something to stop it. He didn't do anything. David Cash needs to be locked up. I want his education taken away from him. My child would not be able to go on with her education. She was 7 years old. She would not be able to go to junior high. She would not be able to go to high school or college and beyond.
People were rightfully pissed off, certainly in part due to David appearing on a local radio station and coming off especially cold. This radio station also helped in getting the word out. I think this was the same radio station that actually organised and held a protest against David.
How much am I supposed to sit down and cry about this? I mean, let's be reasonable here. Is my life supposed to halt for days, weeks, and months on end?
And if that weren't bad enough, he added this.
The simple fact remains, I do not know this little girl. I do not know starving children in Panama. I do not know, people that die of disease in Egypt.
He didn't stop there, however. In a 60 Minutes interview that serves as a remarkably candid look into David's psyche, he doubles down on his claims while getting some fairly tough questions most people would have a hard time even thinking about. He answers with no remorse, and this was sadly not an act. He genuinely didn't think he did anything wrong, legally or morally. In a section of the interview, David agrees to talk to some fellow UC Berkeley alumni about the situation, and the students don't disappoint. A 24-year-old was actually arrested on a misdemeanor battery charge after spitting in his face in a separate incident, and the student government had tried and failed twice to get him kicked out of the university, so it's safe to say there may be some slight bias.
A lot of people say, how come you didn't stop the murder? How come you stopped the rape? I never felt anything was going to happen to her. If I thought that, that was going to happen, of course I would have stopped it. I don't want this on my conscience that, I allowed, somebody to die.
Is it on your conscience?
Not to the extent that
yes or no? Is it on your
not
conscience?
To the extent that most people would want it to be.
Yes or no?
Not to the extent that most people would want it to be.
Okay.
I really have a hard time believing that you thought that nothing wrong was going on.
No chance.
Alarm you that for 25 minutes he's still in the bathroom with a 7-year-old girl? I mean, that's just not a normal occurrence, and wouldn't you want to go back in there?
Okay, let's think of it. Let's say after 25 minutes I come to the conclusion that he's murdered this girl, all right? Do I storm into the bathroom, and then what happens to me? Okay, let's say a security guard walks in, I'm sitting here, with my best friend with the dead body there. You know what I mean?
I think it's very clear to all of us that David Cash's mindset was, what is best for me? What is going to keep me out of trouble? You have expressed no remorse, no feeling that you felt bad at all that this young girl was murdered.
How is it that you can sit there and feel comfortable with yourself, waiting 3 days when you could have assisted the police in pursuing Jeremy? You could have done any number of things, but you did nothing.
It's easy for you people to say, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Like, you didn't know Jeremy. But at the time, I made the best possible decision.
Still stood by and let a little girl be raped and killed, and I don't think we should stand by and let you get away with that.
Okay, you just said I stood by and let a little girl get raped and killed.
Yeah.
That is wrong. I did not see that. I did not witness that. I did not know that was happening.
David Cash was unable to convince these students that he belongs at Berkeley. They say they want him out.
But these were questions that were on everybody's mind at the time. It's hard not to see how emotionally illiterate David is being, and even easier to see why people might be mad with him. There was many campaigns against David, and when shot the question if he would leave, this was his answer.
Do you have any intention of leaving?
No, I do not. That would be foolish.
Why?
Berkeley is one of the best engineering schools in the country. Why would I leave? That would be stupid.
A number of students say that they're going to take matters into their own hands and in essence, run you out of here. Can they?
They will fail. I have no intention of leaving.
I think his arrogance shines through so incredibly bright here, and it's kinda sad, because at the core of all this is a poor little lady who so tragically lost her life at the pair of pure monsters. Evil takes many forms, and in this story it takes the form of David and Jeremy. Together they capture and effortlessly display some of the most grotesque and unthinkable sides of humanity in a single frame. So what do we stand to learn from this? Did anything good come from this? Can anything good come from something like this? Sherice Iverson's murder led to the passage of Nevada's State Assembly Bill 267, requiring people to report to authorities when they have reasonable suspicions that a child younger than 18 is being sexually abused or violently treated. The impetus for the bill stemmed from Cash's inaction during the commission of the crime. There was something similar adopted by California too, and opens the possibility for a fine and even jail time for anyone who fails to report a crime of the nature that led to the creation of the bill. The bill was enacted in 2000 and still stands today, and at least there is this. I mean, so many murders and rapes go not only unsolved but totally unappreciated, with the victim just left to suffer. At least little Sherice didn't go in vain and has been immortalised in legislation. The topic of ethics is brought up here, and morals, something humans have been pondering on for as long as we've been a species capable of communication, and the conversation rages on still today. It's hard to generalise on the matter usually, because we all have a different idea of what good morals are. With this case, however, I think one thing is easy to agree on. How David was acting was against the unwritten rules of our society, against the fabric of human existence, and the incongruence was jarring enough to give you whiplash. His lack of remorse likely made a few people pause and question their own ethics. It forced us all to take a look at the current legal system and ask if this was correct. It reminded us in a small way that the systems and codes we live by are made up by humans and thus susceptible to the very thing that I think makes us incredible, our fallibility. Just like us, our codes and ethics should change when presented with information that challenges them, just like this. Either way, I hope Sherice is resting easy up there. It's a brutal way for anyone to go, but a young lady should never have to witness or experience what she did. No parent should have to bury their child, and I hope Jeremy rots in hell after those years of rotting in that 6x8 cell that he now calls home. David, on the other hand, I have almost no words for. He went on to get a degree in a decent paying field and live a long and full life. He's currently about and active on social media, with people still wanting him to face repercussions today because, as of recently, it was found out by internet sleuths that he bagged himself a high-paying job, but some choice articles were sent to his employer and he was swiftly terminated. I'm never one to take pleasure in another's demise, especially about work, in this socio-economic climate, but call me cynical, call me mean, maybe I am just getting old, but I don't think David deserves nice things, I really don't. I'd never actively tried to promote that, but I'm never going to be upset when I hear David might be having a hard time. I will always reply with, so was Sherice when you left her there to die in that bathroom, when you knowingly walked away from her dead body to go play with your buddy. But, AP English, hell has a seat saved for that chap, that I am sure of. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, all I ask is you say a little prayer for Sherice Iverson. Take care of yourself.